First Lady, as you say, saying that they have now tested positive for the coronavirus. They're in quarantine. There's a lot we don't know. We don't know whether they're showing any symptoms, what level of the disease that they are experiencing. But what we do know, of course, from the experience of everyone else that's suffered from coronavirus, is that this won't be a quick process in terms of the quarantine and the recovery, and everyone is different. This is a man in his 70s. He is known to be overweight. He has some of those conditions that the experts say make it more difficult to recover from coronavirus. That's not to say that he isn't going to make a full recovery, but coming almost exactly a month before polling day and a full schedule of events that it seems, at least at the moment, that the president will be unable to carry out any of those engagements. He was due in Florida on Friday night. Clearly that isn't going to happen at a rally, and there's a huge question mark over the rest of the campaign and possibly over the election process itself.
Peter, give us a little bit of background, because what we did know was that Hope Hicks, who's one of his closest advisors, had tested positive, which is why they were in quarantine.
Yes, and that news emerged earlier in the evening, and it was first reported by US media outlets citing their sources. It was then President Trump himself in another tweet earlier who confirmed that Hope Hicks had in fact turned out to be positive for the coronavirus. He said that was terrible, and that was when he first revealed that he and the First Lady had gone into quarantine. We know that Hope Hicks is one of the president's closest advisors. She is in his inner circle. She's a former communications chief at the White House. She then went out to work in the private sector for a while. She then returned to be this close advisor to the president, amongst many others. She travels a lot with him, twice just in the last few days, to Minnesota for a rally and for the debate in Cleveland on Tuesday night. She was part of the president's entourage. She traveled on his flight on Air Force One. She was in very close proximity with him and other key figures in the administration. The White House said earlier that contact tracing was being done and relevant people had been informed. And we can only believe that that involves some very high up people in the Trump administration at the center of US government.
Peter, I understand, of course, that this confirmation that Donald Trump, people will be just tuning into us this morning. We have had that confirmation just in the past few minutes. President Trump tweeting to say that he and his wife have both tested positive for coronavirus. We understand from the White House doctor that Donald Trump will carry out his duties without disruption. I mean, immediately, and I know you're trying to digest this at the same time as we are, there will immediately be concerns for him personally about his health. I mean, that is primarily, this is a health story about him, and there are then so many implications as to how this will affect process.
Well, when you say that he's going to try to carry out his duties, of course, I think immediately of Boris Johnson in the UK. In the early stages of his diagnosis in Downing Street, he was attempting to carry out his duties as well. And I'm just wondering if we have a similar situation in the White House, with the president in isolation, but still trying to run the country. That seems to be what they are saying at the moment, but it is very early days, and we have to see how the disease affects him, how the positive diagnosis affects him, and what sort of treatment he gets.
And Peter, what do we know about the testing? How much testing was done within Trump's closest advisors and individuals? Do we know much about what precautions were being taken?
Yeah, the president would often say that he was tested frequently. We don't know how often, but we're often led to believe that it could be every day, and that those around him, those visitors, perhaps visitors from overseas or governors visiting Washington, would all be tested before they could actually meet the president. And he talked about this on numerous occasions and often justified his attitude towards measures to protect yourself from the coronavirus by wearing a mask and social distancing, seemingly because he would say, well, I've been tested and I'm okay, and those around me are okay as well. That was an attitude that was much criticised, and very often Donald Trump would say things that really flew in the face of what his medical advisors and medical experts on the coronavirus task force were saying about how Americans should behave. But we've all seen the rallies, we've all seen the events that President Trump has attended with an audience largely not wearing masks, not social distancing, and the president taking the lead in that kind of casual attitude towards the virus.
So we're just getting a little more information as we're talking, Peter, and I'll just try and keep people informed about this. So the White House doctor is saying both President Trump and Melania, the comment is from the White House doctor, they are both well. And we understand that the information we're receiving is that the First Lady and the President will quarantine within the White House. And, of course, immediately there are implications around just how they will proceed. Trump, we're told, will carry out duties without disruption during quarantine. Again, this is all from the White House doctor, and it's emerging literally as we speak. That confirmation only coming in the last 10 minutes. There are many questions around this.
Yeah, and in quarantine in the White House, we can only assume that means in the private quarantine.